I constantly cheer, root, and promote DaVinci Resolve to all editors, I still use Final Cut on a weekly basis. And because of that, I'm going to give you the real, non-vague, non-YouTubery reasons why Resolve is better than Final Cut and why Final Cut is better than Resolve. I daily drive both Final Cut for shorts and DaVinci Resolve for everything else. I also used to use Final Cut for everything else. Let's crush some myths and talk about real differences that actually matter. When I say audio, what I'm mostly referring to is Resolve's ability to have track-wide and project-wide effects. This is a huge time saver when working in Resolve and allows you to tweak your compression, limiting those types of effects on a single track, affecting all of your audio clips without having to individually manipulate or change each one. This is what you have to do in Final Cut. I really wish that it had an ability to add roll level effects. This would be huge. The workaround, of course, is to use compound clips, but again, this is more painful than doing the track-based system that Resolve has built in. Ah, yes. Keyframing. You, Apple. I cannot believe how bad keyframing is in Final Cut, and I didn't fully comprehend just how bad it was until I used Resolve. For an example, let's do a simple pop text effect. Yeah, I like this effect. TLDR, you are manipulating the scale of your text with keyframes. In Final Cut, you can't smooth this out, and the UI sucks. In Resolve, the UI is amazing. You can easily change the smoothness and the path of the line. All in all, it makes the effect look amazing, whereas in Final Cut, it only looks okay and quite amateur. And this is just one example. In general, keyframe control in Resolve is great and hardly available in Final Cut. Final Cut, you have to improve this. Final Cut's first big W. Although this win could be summed up to simply the magnetic timeline, I think there's more to dive into here. My main beef with Resolve is that when I put clips onto the timeline, unless I do a specific action called place on top, I very easily can override other clips and audio effects without even being told, and that sucks because sometimes you lose things and forget that they were there. The reason I love Final Cut is because when I put clips into the timeline, it either automatically places them on top, it either automatically places them in between and moves things in a very intuitive fashion, and in the event that you directly put a clip on another clip, it asks you if you want to replace it. Again, Resolve doesn't ask, it just overwrites it. And while I have gotten used to this and do use place on top to non-destructively add clips, it kind of messes with my audio workflow and overall is more cumbersome than the way that you interact with the timeline in Final Cut. Is this a deal breaker and why you shouldn't use Resolve? Not necessarily, but it is something that I feel could be improved on their end to make the experience better. I love this about Final Cut. Once again, Final Cut, I'm sorry, but it's a bloodbath, and a bad one. When it comes to built-in effects, Resolve not only seems to have more, but they are higher quality and more interesting to use. And even the ones that they have in common, Resolve just straight up wipes the floor. My personal favorite, Camera Shake, has an entire panel of parameters to tweak, whereas Final Cut has 2. Resolve also has motion blur, film grain, and analog damage effects, which all of my cinema boys and girls will love. And although it isn't a toolbox effect, the dynamic zoom effect that can be applied to all clips in Resolve saves me tons of keyframing time. To do something similar, you need a plugin for Final Cut. There's a ton to dissect here, but take it from me as someone who uses both. The built-in effects in Resolve inspire me to be creative, whereas they feel like they limit me in Final Cut. also. So these are the main differences, beefs, gripes, whatever you want to call them, that I have with DaVinci and Final Cut. That being said, the further I got into this video, the more I realized that I had, which means that while these were the main ones, I'm gonna have to make a part 2. What are you guys using, Final Cut or Resolve? Comment down below.